Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all enjoying seeing each other's faces, those who are on the screen. And I think it's pretty awesome to see so many people from South Africa and Namibia who've joined us today. So we, I think the idea is that SAGTA would like to share a lot of information and help with you so we can make your life a little bit easier. So Pam has been driving how can we help the teachers in this situation? And we hope that what we've got for you today will make a big difference. So we are recording it. And so if you need to get access to that, I'm going to show you where it is as well. I'm thinking this is your situation right now, that you're not getting much work out of the children and that they are like just waiting for the world to settle down and start getting normal so that they can start studying. Anyway, right, just some suggestions for a happy webinar so we are all on the same page. Please can I ask you to stay muted while someone is talking, and please use the chat. We would also like you to put your question into the chat, please, even if you're asking it out loud, so that we have a record of the questions, and if there's anything we need to follow up, then we can do that as well. If you find your streaming is a little bit slow, just put your video off, that's fine. Some of us will keep our videos on just so that Pam has someone to speak to. And then please stick around for the quiz at the end. We really hope you'll enjoy the idea of answering some questions yourself and winning something. So please don't disappear until we've got all our feedback. Thank you so much. Right, so for today, we're going to look at sugar and KZN, which I think is awesome. It's desperately needed. And we'd like to help you with all sorts of help and stuff, just so that we can make sure that you don't have to go do, well, let's not reinvent the wheel. Okay, so that's the idea. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. So I'm going to show you quickly where we've put all our resources before Pam continues. Let me just quickly finish this, change my screens for you quickly. Right, I'm hoping that this screen is very well known to all of you. It is the SAGTA website, and it's where we try and keep all our stuff. So we have a prep share button up at the top here. But if you come down here where your author photo and topo maps are, you've got your online teaching resources, and this is the one that you would like to find right now. Okay. So if you click on that one, it's going to open up the prep share folder for you, and you will find that there is a huge amount of information that is being kept here. I cheated, so I opened it up all the time. Okay, so there's too many people here. Wait, let's just quickly.
When a young kid, maybe about 22 years old, was in a car.
Okay, sorry, just got to get that one out. Okay, so here you can see, if you open up your prep share and you click on the webinars link, you will see the one that says webinar 3, which is the one we're doing today. And we've put everything we've collected into this folder to make it easy for you to find, so you don't have to go and find it yourself. If you look in that webinar, you are in that webinar 3 folder, you'll find that there are 2 PowerPoints, which Paula has made. Thank you so much, Paula. They are pretty awesome with a lot of information. The one that she's put in there for you is this one. It is the KwaZulu-Natal industrial region, and she's got lots of maps, pie charts, and information. So it's really awesome. You can teach straight off this, and you don't need to go and recreate your own one. Okay, so that's the one that she's created for KwaZulu-Natal. And then she's also got a sugarcane one, also with lots of really lovely images, maps, and it's another PowerPoint ready for you to use. So once again, we've collected a lot of information for you, and you don't need to go and do it. You can use this and you can just teach from that. Okay, so in the prep share folder, webinar 3, there's another alternate task from Jill. Thank you, Jill, for sending that along. That's awesome stuff. So you've got an alternate task which you can give to your matrics. The glossary of terms, which Pam set up and has available for you, is also here. They are the 2 PowerPoints. And then we've also created a document with very useful websites. If your students aren't in South Africa and have access to the internet, or if you have students that are sitting at home, they can go and read up even more about it. Okay, so here is some of the information we've already collected, and Pam will be adding in today's work as well. Thank you, Pam. I think, would you like to carry on? Let's just unmute you. No. Pam, can you just unmute yourself, please?
Is that better?
Yes, thank you, got you.
Right. Hi, everybody. I'm quite daunted by our response, but I'm also excited. But as we just wait for everybody to kind of get their bearing, what I really would like to do is have a moment's silence. As we're looking at farming in KZN, I would really like us to reflect on the recent farm murder this last weekend of Akia Ishmael, who was 3 months pregnant, and she was killed in Weenan, quite a wealthy, or not wealthy, good farming area. So she leaves behind her husband, Ayub, and 2 children who are going to be without a mother and a wife. And I just would like us just to reflect on that and reflect on the status quo in the country, and let us hold them up in our thoughts, the family, the community that's struggling with it. Right. So I'm not the expert, but I really enjoy putting together resources and everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the Durban industrial region, and obviously there's a video and some PowerPoint notes from Carol Eichstadt, which will be on the webinar site later on. And I'm going to just go through a couple of key areas. This is how I would plan my sort of research on the area and look at some key points in that region. I'm actually speaking mainly to photographs and a few sort of slides. I'm not putting lots and lots of notes on this presentation, but all of it will be in the folders we share. And then I'm going to look at sugar farming. Now, Carol Eichstadt did an excellent set of notes. I'm not reinventing the wheel. None of us need to do it. It will be in the folder. You had a Sugar Association presentation at conference, and so to the South African Sugar Association. I've included that. My PowerPoint presentation will be available, and plus some other kind of recommendations. Sue Thompson, is she on? Is she present? Because she's my question and answer evaluator. So she's going to watch your chat very carefully, and every now and again there's going to be a key question, and you can share your answer on chat. She's going to evaluate, and every now and again she'll tell me who the winner is. So I trust Sue has joined us. Right, so what I'd like to do is recommend that the theme that we've got now can link in very nicely with grade 11 development geography. So you could look at under resources and export-led development. You could do a lot of your theme work in a grade 11 year. And even at the end of the year, you can set your question 1 on the theme for the following year. Then you've actually covered and done that groundwork. It gives you time to explore other options. I've also included a case study on the Usutu Kamati irrigation projects. Some of you will remember probably early 200, after the turn of the millennium, we went up to Swaziland, Mananga College, and we did a study of that Kamati irrigation project. So there's something there. go back to past IB exams. There was one on Connubia, which is part of the Durban Trade Port extension area. There was one on Durban Trade Port in 2016. If you've got ACIT, there are case studies there. For me, in researching this, the Sugar Association has certainly been the most useful, the best site that I've come across. Even a task getting your learners online to explore the association, have a look at some of the news reporting, the contentious issues, look at some of the stats, and they can compose their own kind of case study. A very easy task that you could set for online teaching. So with that said, let's get on to it. So we're looking at this industrial region, and sorry, let me do that. So we'll start with a traditional port hub, and that is around the Durban harbour. So very little development can actually take place at that Durban harbour because it's basically saturated, it's reached full capacity. So we'll look at a few slides there. So development must take place away from that. So if you're looking at the port area where all your export is being done, there are delays up to 3 hours for ships out at sea, out of the Bay area, and for trains and for trucks to get into the harbour. So we'll see some new developments that have occurred as well. Then we're going to just briefly look at the Durban Trade Port area, which is up there at the top of the map. And we'll look at how part of the SDI, IDZ, SEZ. And that's why we say, actually, a lot of this work can be done in grade 11 because, so Tiffany's raised her hand. Sue, are you there? Okay, Tiffany. All right, we carry on. Then I want to look at the old site, which is down the old airport site, which there's talk of new developments there. And then I want to look at a fairly recent development, the last 5 years. It's been developing at a prodigious rate, which is the new dry port at Cato Ridge. So let's go to Durban Port. So these slides are of Durban Port 2010. So what I'd like you to do is just have a look at some of the slides. The Sugar Association is still there. They still export sugar. You've got the container port there. And I want you to look at the size of that container. Pretty small. 2010, they couldn't allow the big containers in. And as export-led development has grown, so your containers have got larger and ports have had to enlarge their entrance points. And then I want you to look at this photograph in particular, the bottom right-hand corner, just to look at the timber there on one of the container ships or timber ships. That's how it goes out to Asia. And then if we look at the next slide, this is now 2019. The harbour mouth has been open, so it's been made wider to allow two-way traffic in at the entrance and to allow the larger ships. So let's look at this container ship and look at the stacks there. They're stacked much higher, and of course the size of the ship is nothing compared to what we looked at 2010. And then obviously this is a row boat here. I see Sue is there. Sue, have you got any questions yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet, okay. So just looking at that, that's quite important. And then part of this enlarging the entrance for the Durban port was very important that they set up a filter system. So all the sediment that kind of creates sandbanks at the entrance must be moved because of these large ships coming in and out. So they've got a permanent, what would we call it, a filtering system which collects all the sediment at the harbour mouth, and then it pumps it to the other side where you've got South Beach, where you've got longshore drift taking place and a lot of movement of sand up the north coast, towards the north coast. So that's the Durban harbour, pretty saturated, very busy, but very little room for expansion. So then we go to 2010 when the King Shaka International Airport was opened, and we look at this whole Durban trade port development. So this is about 28 kilometers from the harbour, and you can see some nice sort of circles there giving you sort of distances. So it's strategically placed along the M2, and it has the R102 and the M14 that run on either side as well. So it's well accessible. Right, so there's trade port. Question? Right, so location is very important. And I'll just touch a little bit on this. So this is out where we've got La Mercy, we've got, it's beyond Umhlanga, and then you've got Belito up here. This was prime cane fields 20 years ago. Okay, so, and if you look back on the Verulam maps, and many of you got them in your classroom, particularly the older maps, you will see that that site has been allocated for the airport, I think since the 1950s or 60s. Somebody can perhaps give me a date there, but it's always been on the cards. So this was a natural progression, certainly in a very good location. So now I need to get this to play.
Between Durban and Richards
I've got a question, Pam.
two of Africa's busiest
Okay, just
purpose both to develop airport-related business and home to King Shaka International Airport. Operator of the Durban Trade Port Industrial Development Zone, or IDZ, this prime investment location is designed to promote business growth, job creation, and the attraction of foreign and local investment in KwaZulu-Natal. Durban Trade Port comprises of Durban Cargo Terminal, one of the most secure and technologically advanced in the world, capable of handling 100,000 tons annually with automated handling for the efficient processing and movement of time-sensitive goods 24/7. Durban Trade Zone, designated an IDZ, contains premium, fully serviced industrial real estate and is the ideal location for air freight-orientated light industry, home to Durban Trade House, which accommodates freight forwarders and shippers in a single facility. Durban Trade Zone provides fully integrated supply chain efficiency. Durban City, a mixed-use development for business, retail, and hospitality. Just 3 minutes from the airport, Durban City is highly visible with easy access to major road networks. Durban AgriZone, designated an IDZ, is designed to stimulate the growth of KZN's perishable sector. This high-tech future farming platform hosts Africa's largest climate-controlled growing area under glass. The zone contains on-site packing facilities, as well as Durban AgriLab, a laboratory that propagates high-quality disease-free plants. Durban iConnect services the entire precinct, offering secure cloud hosting and telecommunications to on-site tenants and the public through registered IT resellers. Durban iConnect is KZN's most connected disaster recovery solution. Durban Trade Port provides unrivaled infrastructure, support, and connectivity. It's the future of business for Africa and the world. Durban Trade Port, moving your business forward. Between
Right, there were some questions. Sue, what have we got?
Tennille asked, is it true that the land around the harbour or the old airport site is sinking?
Oh, I don't know that, but we'll have a look at it now. We are going to look at it.
And
right,
then David
yeah.
wants, he said that the delay is 3 hours and not 3 days.
Did I not say
Getting
3
to the
hours?
port.
3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, 3 hours. Okay.
I thought I said 3 hours. Or was he saying 3 days?
No, he says, David?
Isn't it 3 days? I thought it was.
Well, it could be 3 days. I asked my husband too. Yeah, look, I mean, I stand to be corrected. I just know that when you come into the harbour, these ships are standing out there. Yes, it could be. I mean, it is. That's that's
You know the delay to the
hugely
harbour.
possible. Right, so what we've got
know
here
the
is
delay
just,
into
this
the
was a
harbour?
photograph
Of ships.
the delay into the
How
harbour.
many days? 3
Well, it
hours,
depends
3 days.
whether they've got a berth or not. I'm not quite sure about that. I'd have to ask my husband. He might be able to share me. I'll see if I can get an answer before the end. Okay. So here is the layout of Durban Trade Port, and it's over an aerial photograph. So what you'll see is that there's a lot of agricultural land around it. This photograph was taken in 2009 when we organized an APTOSA geography sort of visit to the site under construction. This is the Durban Trade Port. So once again, you can see the farmland around it. That's what it looks like today. And then these are some of the investors here. And the interesting thing is, if you look here, you'll see Gift of the Givers, Sangsum SA, but a lot of logistical companies have invested here to obviously help with the export-led development.
Pam?
Yes?
Dave Gear wants to know what products are grown in the agri-zone market.
We'll look at it now.
Okay.
All products that are grown are tomatoes, green peppers, hothouse cucumbers. I think it may extend to mushrooms, but those were the original products. And then surrounding this Capanese estates, they grow strawberries. And a lot of the stuff is packaged at the agri-zone and then obviously freighted out by air freight. So, I mean, those, they might be, if you look at this, it's green peppers, it's tomatoes, and I think the hothouse cucumbers. All right. So that's the agri-zone. Okay, so this is the old airport site, Durban South. So there you can see the actual old runway, the oil refineries around it. This is the Bluff area here. We've got Wentworth over here, and you've got going towards Isipingo there. So very, very much a heavy industrial area. But as you can see, the space for further development of the airport is quite limited. So this site has been under consideration for a long time with Transnet and the Ports Authority. And I mean, I think the conversation's been going on for almost 20 years, how to utilize the site. And the idea is to build a deep water port. So that's the artist's impression. And that would then alleviate the congestion in the main harbour where expansion is just not possible. I mean, they are working to capacity here. So it would be open up. This is, I think, the Umlaas Canal here. You would open it up and create this deep water port, which would alleviate the congestion there. But it still doesn't alleviate traffic congestion. It might alleviate port congestion, but the traffic congestion is huge because there's been a move in the last 20, 30 years away from rail and to trucking. Right, so that is probably one of the delays to get containers to the actual docks to be loaded to the ships, and then of course your berthing space. So here you'll see this is quite an innovative development. Yes, so it's about money, I suppose, whether they'll do it or not. They're quite sure that they'll go ahead. And you know what? The Chinese are redeveloping all the harbors in Africa. Who knows? The Chinese may come to the rescue. Right, so the new development here is the dry port at Cato Ridge. So Cato Ridge is about 28 kilometers from Maritzburg. It's on the N3. And it's just off the R103, which is the old main road. And of course, there's a railway, a dedicated railway line that comes in here and there's a rather a large shunting facility and rail depot here. All right, and then there's a track that comes like this, and it goes into this area here. Now my husband tells me this is the actual dry port area here. Okay, so that's where it started, and slowly you can see people are developing. This is quite an old photograph, but that's what's on Google. And you'll see a big logistics zone is developing. You've got Asman manganese just north of this photograph, and you've got a steel factory here too. So there's lots of industry happening, lots of logistical development. So this is kind of the future. Now, if you look at it, you don't see much sugar farming here, not much farming. These were the old rainbow chicken farms here, which have closed down, but it's quite open space here for development. So Portnet, Transnet are seeing this as one way of alleviating congestion at the harbour. So what actually happens, and I'll show, I've got a short video clip here, is they are doing all the customs clearance here. So the containers are being packed here, they're being cleared for customs, they're being taken to the harbour by rail, they're being loaded directly onto ships. So you don't have the kind of daily backlog of about 3 hours of the trucks coming into the Maiden Wharf area. So I think it's quite a highly innovative project, and certainly it's something worth looking at. So let's see if I can get this to work. Do I have to reshare mine? Reshare.
Yes, I think, yeah, there were, we've got the share now.
We got the.
I'm just wondering if there's too many people on for it to play properly for you.
No, I think it'll play.
Okay. Oh, there.
So this is at the dry port. I need to go back to my other presentation. So the question for everybody is, you noted the ship at the harbour 2010, and this was just showing some of the activity at the dry port and the loading of the timber into containers. Why do they need to load it into containers for export now? So the chat, Sue's going to moderate the chat, evaluate the chat. You can answer on the chat. Right, so we're going to look at the sugar industry now, and I've seen this in some of Paula's presentations. So let's have a look at this landscape. This is Umtulweni, which is Umtulumi, which is north coast. Gently rolling hills, very green, very lush, quite intensively cultivated. And obviously you've got a commercial farming landscape with very limited diversification of the product. So this is all sugarcane at various stages. Right, so that's quite important to just keep that in mind when we look at the map. So where would I start if I would have been doing any agricultural product? I would start with climate, and I'm pretty sure your students should all know this by now. So you start with what factors control South Africa's rainfall. So we look at the subtropical high pressure belt. It definitely affects seasonal distribution and distribution of rainfall. So here we've got our annual distribution from east coast to west coast. Under the ISO heights there, you've got some idea. There's an example of the seasonal distribution. So that's quite important when you're looking at viability, success of agriculture. Ocean currents play a very important role because that determines the amount of rainfall, very important. And then obviously to look at your relief features. So plateau, escarpment, coastal regions. Then I've added in another factor here, and this may please you, Dave Gear, because you're down in the low veld, but here's the low veld here, this corridor here. So these Lubomba Mountains actually form a little bit of a rain shadow along here, because that's the first barrier into Swaziland and the low veld over there. And then this is the escarpment over here. So we need to bear that in mind when we look at where irrigated sugar occurs and where you've got rain-fed cultivation. So that's quite important to look at that and to revise that. And they should be doing it in grade 11 already. So just a checklist. You can always stop and ask your learners to do this. So here are some key questions or key terms. Here are some descriptions. There are 6 of them. And you need to, in your chat, give the order of which term belongs to each statement. So all I need, or all Sue needs to do, is she needs to see the order of the letters there. So there are 6 letters. Sue, I think after it's fast as fingers first. After the top 6, you can stop evaluating.
Okay.
Any questions so far? Right, so let's just look at sugar in KZN and the physical map. So what I've done is we've got Pongola at the top here. I've drawn in the 800 millimeter ISO height. It's approximate. I can't verify that it's 100% accurate. So you've got an area here, which is your coastal region here, coastal plains, 800 to 1,000 millimeters, and then you move towards the interior, and you've got between 600 and 800. So Maritzburg here, I think our average rainfall is about 693 per annum. So we're in that sort of area there. Right, so what you'll see is the rain-fed crops are, it's strange, it's further south, but it's all along this area here, along the coastal plain. And then obviously in the Natal Midlands, we've got quite a lot of very successful sugarcane being grown. Then if we go up further north, a lot of this is now through irrigation. And then particularly when we look at Pongola and you're going to Eswatini, Swaziland, and then up to Komati, all of that is grown under irrigation. And that's where that rain shadow comes in. So if we extended, just get my highlighter, if we extended and put in our Lubomba Mountains here, and you've got your escarpment here, here's your rain shadow. All right, so if we go back to where Durban Trade Port is, that's where it is there. Right, if we come up the freeway to Durban, this is where Cato Ridge is. So you're not affecting sugar farming very much. Most of it is actually, yeah, it's natural. Very little sugar in that area. Right, so what you also have here is you'll notice all the sugar mills very close to the predominant agricultural areas, and that's hugely important for the farming industry. Right, so if we just look at it, and this is some stats that Tiffany sent through today from SAGTA, and so this has changed from the presentation that you would have had. So if we look at this, this panel here to the side, that's our total growers. The large-scale commercial farmers only constitute about 5% of the total grain growers in the country. The rest, 95%, are your small-scale farmers. So it becomes very important in protecting the sugar industry because the majority of your farmers are small-scale farmers and therefore become a little bit more vulnerable. The other factor that we really need to look at is the seasonality of sugar farming. So the growing seasons, the fact that it is a seasonal crop, it affects the labor complement, it affects how you organize your labor. We'll look at the importance of the rural industry. So we're going to look at the importance of mills, and then we're going to look at the importance of diversification of our products. All right, so if we go up to Pongola, which is the area at the top of the map, here's the Pongola sugar mill. Pongola's over here, but here you can see the small scale farming, the smaller areas intensively farmed, and of course here's the Pongola River, and so you've got a lot of irrigation that takes place along here. So that's quite important. That's where the majority of your small scale farmers are, up in northern KZN and the Pongola area. This is the area we're talking about where I've taken all the photographs, and this is Crammond, the Midlands area, and what you'll see is more extensive farming. But what you're going to start seeing now, a lot of this in the Midlands, is diversification. So timber is as important as sugarcane. So a lot of the farmers do their timber, and then they also diversify further, and a lot of them are doing broilers or poultry and market gardening. Because you need cash crops, you need a whole lot of those sort of things like that to sustain the farming system. So if you look at it, you'll see fields in different stages. So this obviously was harvested the previous year. They've just harvested this. That is obviously ready for harvesting. And here I get some more scenes around the Midlands. So I did a drive around. And this is what's so interesting. These are wood chipping or pellet plants that have sprung up in the last 5-10 years. Plus you've got your sugar mills, plus you've got your timber mills as well in the farming areas. So this is we've seen the growth of the rural industry, which is quite important. So this is the same shot there. So if we look at diversification, along the coast, macadamia nuts is becoming very important, the avoes and the citrus, whereas inland, you're looking at the vegetables, the timber, and the poultry. Other considerations, and these are huge considerations, the moral one is ethanol. Do we use sugarcane to produce a biofuel? A lot of the farmers are starting to use biogas projects, so they're taking the waste and some of the, so I suppose we call it bagasse, and they are creating their own biogas generators to reduce electricity costs. A lot of this byproduct of any of the milling process, the molasses, bagasse, pressed mud, is all used further. So you've got a beneficiation process. And then we'll look at the end, we'll just look at this new innovation. I came across it, it's just been released. We'll look at using sugarcane for making plastic. Right, so just to highlight, these mills are all where the raw materials are. So your timber mills, your sugar mills, it's quite essential because your very high costs are transport, power, it needs to be close to the raw materials, and then it's taken to the market. And obviously water is also important. So to burn or not to burn, that's always the big question. It's always been the question. Some farmers do. So now in the Midlands, you have to burn because they're using a ratoon that's a 12 months sort of cropping. So they have to burn annually and their crop is ready because it's a frost resistant variety. It's not the same ratoon that would grow along the coast, which often has an 18-month cycle. So a ratoon can be used for about 3 successive harvestings, and then they would replant all the sets. Fire, today we've got Bergwins. This burn was done yesterday. So I contacted a colleague of mine, and she went out with her brother-in-law, and they took these photographs because they were doing a burn. But she was saying it's not, you just don't do a burn. What's quite important is it relies on the weather, the speed at which the previous burn is cut. So can you cut it? And the supply of the lorries by the transporter, and then can the sugar mill actually take the cane that is coming in? So she says it's very complicated. And then obviously this is also quite important here. It's safety and making sure that you've got fire services. And I'm sure that this is where GIS and Office would come in very handy in tracking fire burning. So this is the end product. That's what they started with there. I think it's quite awesome. And thank you, Rose, for sharing this. So is there a question yet? So just to look at the value of sugar to the economy. So if we look at this graph, and it's quite up to date, if we look at this season, the predictions here, they're expecting it to go up by 1 million tonne per hectare this season. So there is an increase in production, so they're expecting that. If we look at this scenario here, that's when we had the devastating drought. And this obviously has been a little bit of our climate cycles, the El Nino, and so on. So drought, lack of rainfall hugely impacts on the sugar industry. Okay, so that's quite important. The other value is look at the number of people employed within the sugar industry. And this includes your whole link industry, everything that's to do with the sugar industry. And there's the average revenue. And this is from SA Sugar Association. So what I've done is, and I'm not going to go through this because I've tried to talk through this as we've gone along, is that's a summary of the factors favoring sugarcane. And then that's obviously the challenges which I've tried to look at. But we'll spend just a little bit of time looking at some of the real challenges here. Sugar tax. So now soft drinks are using more artificial sweeteners. Price fluctuations. So we used to be quite high up. We still ranked within the top 15 producers, but our local farmers are not subsidized. So they really struggle because we get cheaper sugar from Brazil, India, and Eswatini. And in fact, so you get quite a lot of dumping. We've got insufficient tariffs that don't protect your local farmers. And then, of course, you've got exchange rate fluctuations. Droughts we've mentioned. There's that moral dilemma, and I've mentioned all of those. All right, so let's just have a look at the last slide. The one mill, and this is the one I was going to visit, then I realized it was quite difficult to get in, but we're still working on a visit, so I will still get a video, is Dalton Sugar, and they extract vitamin A. It's a nutrient powder, and they use it for nutritional feeding. So they're looking at part of achieving. So this is when they developed it, but obviously it'll be part of the SDGs now and looking at preventing malnutrition. In the rural industry, we've got the mills, but we also have a large charcoal industry and wood chipping industry, as well as your normal sort of planking and so on. So that's quite important. So the last video I want to look at is, let's see if I can do it. is to look at this. Okay, it's not doing it for me. It's quite nice. There we go. All right. So we need to share a screen, Inika. It's the last one.
Yes, if it jumps to your Google, you'll have to change your screen share.
You share. Okay. So I'm looking for.
Oh, looks like it's still thinking.
It hasn't come up. Still thinking. Yeah, it keeps on telling it's unstable here. There it is. Okay. Thought you might enjoy this.
Just change your screen quickly, Pam. Oh, got it. Thank you.
What I got to. You got it.
Yes, thank you.
You got it? Okay. Okay, it's taking a bit of time. There we go. I can stop sharing there. Okay.
Right, Pam, there were some questions. I don't know.
So are there any questions, Sue?
Yeah, there are quite a few, but can I announce the winners of the first two quizzes?
Yes, you may, please. Thank you.
Thank you. The first one was about why the dry port, the packaging of the logs into the container. And most of you came up with very innovative answers, but the best one was Nicola, because those logs that get packed into the containers they're not for chipping, they're for veneer. They're called veneer logs to make veneer surfaces from, so they mustn't be damaged. So by putting them into the container, it's easier to stack, easier to transport, like most of you came up with, but it also reduces the amount of damage that can occur on the log. So first prize goes to Nicola. And in the second one with the multiple choice, only Ron, he's quick with his fingers there. He is the only one who answered that one of the A goes to 6, B4, C5, D1, E2, and F3. So well done, Ron. And that's those two.
Ron.
Okay. There are a couple of questions.
The other thing in terms of, okay. Can I go back to the logs? It's
yes.
also about theft. There's a lot of theft on the rail. And so the railways have to put everything in containers and everything's got to be closed. Otherwise they lose everything. So copper, raw copper that's coming down from Zambia, So that's what the big dry port does as well. Comes down in containers now because they cannot leave leave it open and exposed because everybody just robs the trains. So it's quite sad.
Yes.
Okay, Sue, carry on.
There are a couple of questions here. Dave wants to know, is there any hint of inland migration due to high altitudes of the agriculture as a result of warming trends? So changing in the farming industry, I suppose.
So it's all about climate change. I'm not too sure. The farmers haven't said much. I do know that the sugar industry is in straits at the moment, and they've actually, I mean, if you read some of the Sugar Association, under concerns and news items, they'll say they've actually asked Patel, they've kind of asked him to give them a lifeline and everything. They've been asking for subsidy. So rainfall and frost. So when you looked at that Crammon Basin, you may have seen a row of hills. That's kind of the limit, because beyond that, rainfall becomes a problem, and then also your soil type, and then frost. So I'm not too sure. I mean, I'll certainly ask Lloyd and for some information there. Yes, there is sugarcane in Mpumalanga. That's in Kamati, Poort area. That's in the Lowveld. Yeah.
Okay, then there's another question. Inaka asked, what is the best way for a student to identify sugarcane farming on an aerial photograph?
Okay, so if you go back to that one beautiful aerial photograph, you're looking at uniformity. So you need to look at your tone, your texture. It's kind of uniform. Very distinct of sugarcane farming is your contour planting, because they have those sort of pathways between each set, which is quite important. I suppose that's for cleaning and for getting into the cane. You also will see quite a lot of storage dams. You'll also see that the farmers are actually very good in KZN in terms of sugar farming. They preserve all the waterways. So you're going to see all the tree lines there. So it's an ideal commercial farming landscape where they apply everything aerially. So if you go back to that first photograph where it looked lovely in green, use that as an example. But uniformity, I think, is, when you look in tone and color. Thank you.
Okay, then there's another one.
Another question?
Mr. Nyamunda asks about the excessive pollution and our concerns with the environment. Is there not a better, more friendly way of replacing the burning of sugarcane?
Okay, so the burning of sugarcane, look, there are a number of options. In terms of the Midlands, because it's frosted, they've got a lot of dry chaff, it's much easier to burn it. But what the burning does is it increases the sugar content. And that's what the farmers are looking for, because in the Midlands, their ratoon cycle is 12 months. So they harvest once a year. So they want to get the best sugar content. And when they do a burn, and that's why the burn is so critical from the time that they burn to the time they get it to mill, because they're paid on the sugar content of the cane. And so the burn actually increases the sugar content. At the coast, you've got a longer ratoon, so it's 18 months, and they rely on a good flowering season, which then increases the sugar content. So they may not use burning as much as this. The burn also, if you start to look at it, it's quite good in terms of when they burn it. Some of them slash it and then they burn the rows. What they're doing is putting nutrients back into the soil as well. And a burn also helps with Nunu's organisms, disease and things like that. So they still use it. I suppose there are other methods, but for farmers, do what they think, what they know best. Sue?
Okay, there's now Megan's phone asked this. Can I please ask about the small scale farming? Would you describe this as intensive farming as the farmers are using smaller areas? I'm not too sure if you're talking about the sugarcane.
So if you looked at that Pongola area, that is intensive. I would say that's quite intensive farming, but it's on a small scale. So it's a kind of a patchwork pattern. Those plots are about, 10 hectares. And that's where a lot of your smallholders are growing. And then, as in Swaziland too, a lot of that water for irrigation is subsidized. So they do get subsidies for irrigation. They do get support there because they wouldn't be able to grow without that irrigation. Yeah, very important part of the sugar industry is your small scale farmers. And of course, they also will have a certain quota, so they're also under pressure to get their cane to the mills to get their sort of once a year payment. Okay, Sue?
Okay, there's another one from, yes, one more from Zwalga. It says, how has sugarcane farming and mills impacted settlements in KZN?
Well, you've got a lot of small villages that have developed, so service centers, central places. So the one that I went to, there's Wartburg, there's New Hanover, there's Eston. So you've got small communities there. It keeps the people on the land, it keeps the people in these rural areas. That rural industry, I think, has been very important for growing the rural areas rather than have people migrate to the cities and find they're unemployed. I think it's been quite good in terms of supplying quite a large rural population with a form of secure employment future. Are those the questions, Sue?
That's it. Nobody's asked anything else.
Inika?
Okay.
That's it.
All right, thank you. So let's see who knows what Pam has been talking about. I'll leave it on a little bit longer, but please in the chat put your answers. Let's see if we can get them all right. Thanks, Dave. Yes, I understand some people are having to leave, so that's absolutely fine. Those of you who are with us, let's see if you can get these right. And then I reckon if you give the presentation Pam has just done, you would also be able to test your students. So, right, I'm leaving it up a little bit longer. I wonder if anyone else is trying to get this one. Pam, we're putting your presentation onto the PrepShare site as well, right?
Yeah. So I will share my folder with you after this, and it's got a whole lot of stuff in.
Okay, great.
I just struggled a bit with internet today. I don't know why.
Yes, I saw it. I don't know. It must be the bad weather that's on its way. Anyone answered? No one's answering.
Nobody's
Nicola,
answered.
will you
no.
make sure you get you?
Oh, there we go. 1G.
Will you make sure that you get the addresses for me? So I need, is it Nicola Wilmot?
That's
I
right.
need Ron's address so that I can post these dictionaries.
Tim Barker's got. Tim Barker was the first one.
Yes.
Tim Barker.
Ron's changing his mind.
There's more.
They were coming in now, but Tim was the first one to be correct.
Yes,
Okay, well, it's fastest finger first. And they've got to be accurate.
All right, let's put the answers up. We'll take them out of their misery. Okay. There we are. Yes, I think Tim is
Yeah.
right there.
He is right, yeah.
Oh, wonderful stuff. Okay, so
Ron's
Tim,
finger was too quick.
Yeah, no, you'll have to send me an email to help@SAGTA, please, so that we get your details, because we're going on chat names here. So, but well done to everyone who got that. Well done, Pam. That was awesome
So
stuff.
we want Nicola Wilmot, Ron, and Tim Barker.
That's
Yeah.
right. They can just send
Those
it.
are the three. Okay.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Pam.
I've written
Thank
it in the chat, but I just wanted to know, the small scale farmers, would those count as subsistence farming or commercial, because they're making such a small amount, but then to sell as a cash crop to buy their stuff, it's not for food. I remember a long time ago having a discussion that involved Tony Hamley about whether that was still subsistence or not, a very long time ago.
So the government, this is the government's response to the land issue in farming. So they like to believe that it is commercial farming and it's going to support the family. But I would say that everyone, because I remember my aunt made her family had a small holding at Umkomaas, one of these, and they were contracted to the Sazela mill. And the payments only come through once a year. So you get quite a large sum, but in the meantime, you've got to sustain yourselves. So I don't think you can ever say that there's not going to be what you call it, subsistence farming. I think everybody's got to subsist. And that when you talk to the farmers, the sugar farmers, they just say, we've got to diversify, otherwise we'd never survive. Well, I don't think farming's any golden industry. It's hard work. They work the land and it's tough out there. So I would say, yeah, I think the small holders, it's where your plot size, your hectares is like 10 to 20 hectares. A lot of those small scale farmers, well, I know here in KZN, in this area, would also have timber. They also have a timber lot. So they'll call it a lot, and they'd have some timber as well. And then they do a cooperative when they work together to share transport and get their sugar to the mill or their timber to the mill, because that then reduces their transport costs. And transport costs are horrific.
Yeah.
I took quite a few photographs because the old single track railway lines used to wander through in this area. And of course, they're not used anymore because the little trains used to go to the farm, collect the cane and take it directly to the mill. So now you've got trucking, the transporter that comes in. It's quite difficult for farmers.
When my sister was still in Botswana, they had a lot of those kind of, I guess, subsistence timber farmers. And they also, you would see them stockpiling their logs next to the road for either when the truck came from the mill or when they got together to get the truck to send it to the timber mill or wherever it was that the forestry products were going.
I think the sugar industry is highly organized and highly supportive of all their growers. Because when you look at it, and I mean, the best site is that South African Association, but there are so many people that are out there supporting the small scale grower as well as the large scale grower. I mean, that's all organized already, but there's a huge support system, I think, with the sugar. I was blown over, and I mean, just talking to my colleague when I saw her, I mean, she was just saying, there is so much out there, so much assistance, but just not the subsidy and empathy from the government to support the farmers. Anika?
Are there
you think we should?
Then yeah, I think we should, because we've used an hour of everyone's time, but I think it was amazing. Thank you so much. I'll make the recording available also on the PrepShare site for everyone to access them. Right. I think we'll say goodbye.
Thank you.
So much. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
We really enjoy it
Warm.
and appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay.